What's up, teachers? My name is Genevieve Jackson, coming at you about this distance learning thing that we're going through right now. Now, when they said they were going to do distance learning, some of us were like, yes, that's awesome, and I know exactly what to do. And some of us were, oh my God, what do we do? What do we do? I think everybody's doing a great job. I think what we've been doing, I've been seeing some awesome things. Some of us are like, oh my God, look at this teacher. They're doing backflips on TikTok, and I can't get my kids to log on. Everybody has a different teaching style. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to give you some of the things that I thought about that I went through with distance learning, and I broke it down to about 5 reasons why we don't get the engagement that we want via distance learning. I'm not putting anybody down. I'm not saying you have to change everything, but I wanted to break it down. But also, these are just things that I've learned about what I need to do in distance learning and the things that I need to do in my classroom when we do get back to the regular classroom. Reason number 1, why you do not have engagement on distance learning. This is the first time you've been online. Some of us are just traditional teachers. We teach in the classroom. We don't use a lot of bells and whistles. We teach our children the way we were taught, and that's in a face-to-face environment, and there are a lot of merits to that. Younger kids, they learn most from interaction with human beings, not from tablets and computers. So don't put yourself down if this is your first foray into online teaching. I know this is true for many of the elementary school students who were not using one-to-one devices, while some of the high school, middle, and high school teachers were those kids might be a little more versed in it. If this is your first time online teaching, give yourself a break, please. You're doing an awesome job for even attempting to do this, and it is very new for so many of us. And I want you guys to give yourself a pat on the back for even making the attempt at doing something so huge in an emergency situation. So that's absolutely wonderful for you. Number 2, and this is true for some of my teachers, not all of you, you're giving too much work. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand school is school and home is home. And if we drew that line between school and home, we cannot always expect our students to be in front of the computer for 7.5 hours a day. There's too many distractions. There's little brothers and sisters. There's moms and dads screaming at you to do chores. The television, there's Netflix, Tiger King, Ozark, and all these other things drawing their attention away. I want you to think about how hard it is to keep their focus in a classroom when you've eliminated a lot of those distractions. Entertainment things, you've got Xbox, you've got PlayStations, you've got Wii's, everything that may not necessarily be allowed in school, but of course cannot be banned from the home. All right, so a lot of people's homes are not set up for online learning. Throwing twice as much work at them is not necessarily the solution to keep them engaged. They're going to look at this big old massive pile of work and say, you went from teaching face-to-face, and then all of a sudden they got to log into Brain Pop, then they got to log into iExcel, and then they got to log into iReady, and then they got to log into Reading so-and-so. You just blew every parent's mind right now, and they don't know what it is we're supposed to be doing. I had a talk with one of the parents of a younger child, and she said something very, very interesting. She's like, I don't know how to use these computers the same way you guys do. And she asked me for help, and she said, I don't know. They told me to log into here, they told me to log into here, they told me to log into there, and I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Ladies and gentlemen, you do not have to give an assignment on every single subject every single day. Scale back of the number of assignments you do, especially for the younger kids, ladies and gentlemen. Please understand how difficult it is and how magical you are for getting 25 first graders to do the same thing at the same time. We know that that's nothing less than a miracle. Now the parents know that's nothing less than a miracle. And this same parent told me something very interesting. She said, listen, I am her mom. I am not her teacher, and I don't want to compromise my relationship with her as her mom to be her teacher because it's getting very frustrating. Back off a little bit on the work, please. Number 3, who is not engaging with you? Is it the kid that sat in the back of the classroom and did nothing? It's probably the kid that's not engaging with you right now. So give yourself a break, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of these kids are not self-motivated enough to do difficult tasks without someone encouraging them. And especially if you cannot get the help that you need at home that you would at school, not every parent knows calculus. You have to understand that if the kid was not engaging with you in the classroom, then the likelihood that he engages with you online is very low as well. If the kid was an unmotivated student before, more than likely that kid is an unmotivated student during online learning as well. So give yourself a break, ladies and gentlemen. For the kid who you didn't have a problem with in the classroom and all of a sudden you can't find him or her online, you have to ask yourself, was that kid compliant in the classroom or was that kid engaged in the classroom? Because if they love the subject and were super motivated to learn on their own, then you've let them on their own, they're gonna continue to learn. But if they were compliant just to keep the peace, then you probably lost that kid. Number 4, ladies and gentlemen, you made yourself the center of attention in the classroom and the primary motivator in that kid's learning. So you have to understand, we became teachers because we want to be facilitators of information, not the gatekeeper. Ladies and gentlemen, if the kid wants to move beyond that subject and they're not interested in your subject, that's 100% okay. They could be just interested in you. That's kind of awesome. But if they're 100% interested in you, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're interested in your subject. So understand, if they were interested in you or your subject, the way you kind of jive with everything, everybody was cool in your classroom, kind of like, you know, everybody enjoyed being there, but not everybody was super motivated about the topic itself. That's 100% okay in the classroom, because you can still get them to be motivated about doing the work. However, when you've removed yourself from that equation, now you have to have the student's own interest drive their learning, and that's not necessarily happening. For those of us who teach subjects that are super complicated and sometimes hard to get into, we have to be animated. We have to be the center of attention. We have to constantly be on the go, 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 go. So it's extremely difficult to recreate that on an online format, because it's not the same as engaging. I can't feel your energy online. So that's 100% okay. Give yourself a break if you are just that great of a teacher that they were more interested in you than the subject. And the number 5 and final reason why students aren't engaging online is because of something that we did fundamentally wrong with our school system. We taught our students that learning happens in the classroom, and we constantly tell our kids, well, in the real world, and that's something that we need to stop once we get back to our regular classrooms and back to the traditional style of teaching. We need to let our students know that learning is happening constantly in their lives. They are not going to stop learning once they leave the classroom. They are not going to stop learning once they get home. They may stop reading that book, they may stop doing those math equations, but they are constantly learning, and we have to make sure that whatever we teach them engages every single aspect of their life. Just look at this COVID-19 crisis. When you look at what you can learn from the COVID-19 crisis, you can talk about science, you can talk about media, you can talk about statistics, you can talk about chemistry, you can talk about biology, you can talk about geography, you can talk about so many different things just with one topic alone. We have to stop and understand that when we told the kids that you're out in the real world, we let them believe that being in school is not in the real world. We need to change the way we speak, and we need to tell them when you're out in the workforce, not in the school, when you're out in the workforce. But we need to let them know that learning is something that can happen 100% of the time. And if a student wants to, they can be lifelong learners, and they will learn something. They can get a job at McDonald's and learn something. They can get a job at IKEA and learn something. You're always going to be learning something. You can be helping your parent wash the dishes and still be learning something. So we have to stop this idea that learning only happens in school, because now that we've said that learning only happens in school and that we're the gatekeepers of the knowledge, then when we remove the school aspect of it, then learning in their mind cannot happen. I'm at home. This is home, and that is school. So, and we have to remind them, you can do math at home in a very practical way. You can time out your day. You can do your parents' budget. You can talk about the percentage of what this means, 50% off. You can do math at home in a very, very, very practical and real world way that doesn't always necessarily include being in front of a textbook. You can read for pleasure. You don't have to read just for compliance. You can read something that you enjoy. You can talk about the chemistry of baking things and science and all these different things. Ladies and gentlemen, you know your subject better than everyone else. And if you want your subject to be relevant to the real world, then you have to make sure that you don't ever say that school is not the real world. School has to be the real world from here forward, because we don't know whether the actual brick and mortar structure of school is always going to be present, as we have learned from this crisis. I know what I'm gonna do when I get back to my classroom. I'm going to relinquish control of a lot of what I do in the classroom and give the control back to the kids, and possibly engage them on different levels. So that way, if God forbid we're in this crisis, this type of crisis again, or I'm not there, or even if there's a substitute teacher, those kids can continue to learn and I don't have to give them busy work. I want you to think about it. Every student right now has a front row seat to your classroom and can engage with you in a way that you couldn't in the classroom. So I want you to think about, how are you going to maximize this opportunity? How are you going to maximize this opportunity for that kid to learn and for you to help him or her out? Obviously, the responsibility has to fall a lot on the kid, a lot more on the kid and the parent, and there's not a lot that we can do about that right now. But instead of feeling that you can't do anything, I want you to think of the things that you can do, not just to help yourself out as a teacher, but to help out the parents and the children who this is all new to as well. I think teachers are awesome. I think we deserve a huge pay raise. I think now is a great time to ask ask for it, say, listen, all of us deserve a $20,000 raise across the board. Yes, I'm all for it, because we know what we do. What we do in the classroom is so much more than what happens on paper. It is so much more than a grade in a report card. It is so much more than a score on the kid's standardized test. We know what an impact we have, and let's allow us to continue this strong impact, not by recreating bad systems that we knew didn't work in the classroom, but by creating new ones, so that way we can facilitate it to where we're beloved and cherished, but the student can still function in his or her learning after we are removed from that equation, ladies and gentlemen.